My name is Harper Bennett. I'm 29 years old, and I thought loyalty meant something until my boss looked me in the eye and said, Harper, someone needs to hold down the fort while I'm in Aspen. What happened next proved that while I was spending Christmas Day alone in an empty office answering emails that could have waited until January, my dedication to the company was about to pay off in ways my selfish boss never saw coming. Before I tell you how one phone call from corporate headquarters on December 26th changed everything, and how security footage exposed a boss so negligent he nearly cost the company its biggest client, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how 4 words, Harper, you're being promoted, made my former boss realize he had just handed his own job to the employee he treated like a servant. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. I started working at Meridian Financial Services 18 months ago as a junior account coordinator. It was my first job out of college, and I was determined to prove myself in the competitive world of wealth management. My boss, Richard Caldwell, was the regional director, a 45-year-old man who had been with the company for 8 years and managed a team of 12 financial advisors and support staff. Richard came from money, had an MBA from an expensive private school, and never let anyone forget that his family owned a vacation home in Aspen and a summer house in the Hamptons. Success is about making smart choices, Richard would say during team meetings. Some people are born understanding what those choices are, and others, well, others have to work a little harder to figure it out. The implication was always clear. Richard was naturally successful, while the rest of us were just trying to keep up. From my first day, Richard made it obvious that he viewed me as expendable. While he mentored the male junior advisors and included them in client meetings, I was relegated to administrative tasks, scheduling appointments, organizing files, and handling the kind of busy work that kept me invisible to upper management. Harper handles all the details, Richard would tell clients and colleagues. She's very thorough with the paperwork. It was a polite way of saying I wasn't important enough for anything that mattered. But I was determined to prove my worth. I arrived early, stayed late, and went above and beyond on every assignment. I taught myself advanced Excel functions, studied financial planning principles on my own time, and even enrolled in evening classes to earn my Series 7 license. Richard barely noticed my efforts. In fact, the harder I worked, the more he seemed to take my dedication for granted. Harper will take care of it, became his standard response to any tedious or time-consuming task. She doesn't have much else going on anyway. The comment that stung the most came during our November team meeting, when Richard announced that the office would be closed from December 23rd through January 20 for the holidays. Everyone deserves time with family during Christmas, he said with a smile. Except Harper will need to check emails and handle any urgent client issues while I'm in Aspen. Someone needs to hold down the fort. I felt my heart sink. Not only was I not getting the time off that every other employee was enjoying, but Richard had made the decision without even asking if I had holiday plans. I'll be reachable by phone, if there are any real emergencies, Richard continued, but Harper can filter through the routine stuff so I don't have to be bothered with anything non-essential. I raised my hand tentatively. Richard, I was actually planning to visit my parents in Oregon for Christmas. I haven't seen them since last year, and, sorry, Harper, Richard interrupted with a dismissive wave. But this is part of being in a support role. Client service doesn't take holidays. The irony wasn't lost on me. Richard was taking a 10-day ski vacation with his family, but client service was apparently my responsibility alone. After the meeting, I approached Richard privately, hoping to find some compromise. Richard, I understand the importance of client coverage, I said carefully. But is there any way we could set up an automated system or perhaps have calls forwarded to the answering service? Most of our clients will be with their families too. Richard looked at me like I had suggested something completely unreasonable. Harper, this is your job, he said flatly. If you're not willing to do what's required, maybe you should reconsider whether you're cut out for this industry. The threat was clear. Do what I'm told, or find another job. That night, I called my parents to cancel my Christmas plans. My mother's disappointment was heartbreaking. Honey, are you sure this is normal? She asked. It sounds like your boss is taking advantage of you. But I was afraid to push back. Jobs in financial services were competitive, and I couldn't afford to be unemployed. So, on December 23rd, while my colleagues headed home to their families and Richard boarded a private jet to Colorado, I showed up to an empty office building to spend the next 10 days as the sole representative of Meridian Financial Services. The first few days were exactly as boring and pointless as I had expected. I answered 3 routine emails, forwarded 2 non-urgent voicemails to the appropriate advisors' personal phones, and spent most of my time reading financial journals to improve my knowledge. But on December 26th, everything changed. I was sitting at my desk, halfway through a turkey sandwich I had brought from home, when my phone rang with a call from a number I didn't recognize. Meridian Financial Services, this is Harper, I answered professionally. Miss Bennett? Said a woman's voice. This is Patricia Hendricks from Hendricks Manufacturing. I'm trying to reach Richard Caldwell immediately. We have a serious problem. My pulse quickened. Hendricks Manufacturing was our biggest client, a $50 million account that represented nearly 30% of our regional office's revenue. Mr. Caldwell is currently on vacation, I said carefully, but I'm here to help with any urgent matters. What's going on? Our CFO just discovered a major discrepancy in the investment allocation for our employee pension fund, Patricia said, her voice tight with stress. We're missing nearly 200 in expected returns, and our auditors are asking questions we can't answer. We need Richard to explain the investment strategy immediately, or we're going to have to assume the worst and contact the SEC. My blood ran cold. A missing 200 and potential SEC involvement meant this wasn't just urgent, it was catastrophic. Let me get Mr. Caldwell on the phone right away, I said. Can you hold for just one moment? I immediately called Richard's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. I sent him an urgent text message. Emergency with Hendricks Manufacturing. Call immediately. No response. I went back to Patricia. I'm having trouble reaching Mr. Caldwell, but I'm going to locate him within the next few minutes. In the meantime, can you send me the specific details about the discrepancy? I want to start reviewing the account immediately. Are you qualified to review investment allocations? Patricia asked skeptically. I have my Series 7 license and I'm very familiar with your account, I said, which was true. I had been handling all the administrative work for Hendricks Manufacturing for over a year. I can at least begin gathering the information Mr. Caldwell will need. Patricia agreed to email me the details, and I spent the next hour frantically trying to reach Richard while reviewing the Hendricks account. What I discovered made my stomach drop. Richard had moved 200 from Hendricks' conservative bond portfolio into a high-risk cryptocurrency fund without proper authorization. The cryptocurrency had crashed in early December, losing 60% of its value in 2 weeks. Worse, Richard had apparently been trying to hide the loss by moving money between different accounts, hoping the crypto would recover before anyone noticed. It was exactly the kind of unauthorized, reckless behavior that could not only cost our firm the Hendricks account, but result in criminal charges. I tried calling Richard 12 more times over the next 2 hours. Every call went to voicemail. Finally, I made a decision that would change everything. I called the corporate headquarters emergency line. This is Harper Bennett from the Seattle regional office. I told the executive assistant who answered, I need to speak with someone in senior management immediately. We have a potential compliance violation that could result in SEC action. Within 10 minutes, I was on a conference call with 3 corporate vice presidents, explaining the situation in detail. Where is Regional Director Caldwell? Asked VP Sarah Martinez. On vacation in Aspen, I said. I've been trying to reach him for 3 hours, but he's not responding to calls or messages. There was a long pause. Miss Bennett, said VP Martinez, I need you to conference in the Hendricks client immediately. We're going to handle this situation directly. The next hour was intense but incredibly professional. The corporate team took full responsibility for Richard's unauthorized trades, agreed to reimburse Hendricks Manufacturing for their losses, and assured them that there would be a full investigation. Throughout the call, I provided detailed information about the account history, the timeline of the unauthorized trades, and the current status of all Hendricks investments. Miss Bennett has been extraordinarily helpful and professional, Patricia Hendricks told the corporate team. She's the only reason we didn't immediately terminate our relationship with Meridian. After the call ended, VP Martinez asked me to stay on the line. Harper, I need to ask you something important, she said. How long have you been aware of these unauthorized trades? I discovered them today when Miss Hendricks called, I said honestly. I had no idea Mr. Caldwell was moving money into cryptocurrency funds. But you have been managing the administrative side of this account? Yes, but only the paperwork and scheduling. Mr. Caldwell handles all investment decisions himself. Yet you were able to identify the problem and provide detailed analysis within hours? I've been studying for additional licensing exams, I explained. And I'm very familiar with the Hendricks portfolio because I process all their statements and correspondence. Another pause. Harper, I'm going to be very direct with you, VP Martinez said. Richard Caldwell's behavior this week has been completely unacceptable. He moved 200 without authorization, ignored a client emergency, and failed to maintain basic communication standards while on vacation. My heart was pounding. We're going to need a full report of everything that happened today, she continued, and I want you to document every instance over the past year where you've had to handle responsibilities that should have been Mr. Caldwell's. That night, I worked until 2 a.m., writing the most detailed report of my life. I documented Richard's pattern of delegating critical tasks to me while taking credit for successful outcomes, his habit of being unreachable during important client situations, and his tendency to treat me like an administrative assistant despite my financial services qualifications. I also included examples of times when I had caught potential problems with client accounts that Richard had missed, and instances where my attention to detail had prevented errors that could have been embarrassing for the firm. By December 28th, Richard still hadn't returned any of the corporate team's calls or messages. On December 30th, I received a call from VP Martinez. Harper, corporate has completed our preliminary investigation, she said. Richard Caldwell has been terminated, effective immediately. We'll be conducting interviews for a new regional director over the next 2 weeks. I was stunned. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, though honestly, I wasn't sorry at all. Harper, I have another question for you, VP Martinez continued. Would you be interested in applying for the regional director position? I nearly dropped the phone. What? I stammered. You've demonstrated exceptional competence, client service skills, and integrity, she said. The Hendricks situation could have been a disaster, but your professionalism and quick thinking turned it into an example of how Meridian takes care of our clients. But I've only been with the company for 18 months, I said. And in 18 months, you've earned additional licensing, maintained detailed knowledge of our largest client accounts, and proven that you can handle crisis management better than an 8-year veteran, VP Martinez replied. She was right. The position comes with a 85,000 salary increase and oversight of the entire 12-person regional team, she added, including management of the advisors who used to be your peers. I accepted the position on the spot. Richard finally called the office on January 3rd, apparently unaware that he had been fired. Harper, I'm back from vacation, he said cheerfully. I hope nothing too important happened while I was gone. Actually, Richard, I said, unable to keep the satisfaction out of my voice, quite a lot happened. I'm no longer your assistant. What do you mean? He asked, suddenly sounding concerned. I mean, I'm the new regional director, I said calmly. Corporate will be calling you shortly to discuss your termination and the investigation into your unauthorized trading activities. The silence on the other end of the line was absolutely golden. What investigation? Richard finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. The one that started when you ignored a client emergency to ski in Aspen, I said. Hendricks Manufacturing nearly fired us because of your unauthorized cryptocurrency trades. I spent my Christmas saving your biggest account. That's impossible, Richard sputtered. You're just an administrative assistant. Actually, I'm your replacement, I said. And my first decision as regional director is to implement a policy requiring all staff to be reachable during client emergencies, regardless of personal vacation plans. Richard started to say something, but I interrupted him. Oh, and Richard? I'll be spending next Christmas with my family in Oregon. The office will be properly staffed by professionals who understand that client service isn't seasonal. I hung up the phone and looked around the office that was now officially mine. The best part? 2 weeks later, Hendrix Manufacturing increased their account with us by another 20 million, specifically requesting that I personally oversee their portfolio. Harper Bennett saved our relationship with Meridian, Patricia Hendricks told the corporate team. She's exactly the kind of professional we want, managing our investments. Richard, meanwhile, is currently working at a small insurance agency in Portland, selling life insurance policies to individual clients. I heard through industry contacts that he tells people he was laid off due to corporate restructuring. But I know the truth. And more importantly, so does everyone at Meridian Financial Services. Sometimes the person who makes you work Christmas while they vacation with their family is actually giving you the opportunity to prove you deserve their job. And sometimes, the best Christmas present you can get is the chance to show everyone exactly what you're capable of when the boss isn't around to take credit. I'm now in charge of the same 12-person team that used to watch Richard treat me like hired help. I make more money than he ever did, and I've built a reputation as one of the most reliable regional directors in the company. But the sweetest part of this whole story? Last Christmas, I sent Richard a card from my vacation in Hawaii. Thinking of you this holiday season, it read, "Hope you're enjoying your new career. Harper Bennett, Regional Director." I never heard back. But I did hear from a former colleague that Richard spent Christmas Day working at the insurance office, covering phones while his new boss vacationed with family in Mexico. I guess some people never learn that what goes around comes around, especially around Christmas time.